And welcome everyone to Beyond the Forecast, our last episode this week and our last episode of Severe Weather Awareness Week. So we are going to dive into some fun things today. In fact, we have a new segment for you here in the beginning of the show, but we're also going to turn it to meteorologist John Gross, who's going to tell us about flooding, a major part of severe weather that a lot of people might not consider severe weather. But flooding is one of the biggest concerns when it comes to weather-related deaths. So meteorologist John Gross breaks down flooding for us, and then I give you a fun convection experiment that shows you how convection works, or the movement of warm air. And then meteorologist Haley Fischetti and I sit down and have our very first live podcast where we reach out to you, the viewers, and discuss a topic. And today's topic is, of course, this week's topic, severe weather. So we'll show you a portion of that brand new podcast that we just did. But first, let's dive into our new segment and talk about viewer questions. All right, so Fridays, we are going to open up the floor to you. A lot of people have been writing into us, whether it's by email or whether it's on our Beyond the Forecast Facebook page and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we love to see it. So we are implementing Viewer Question Friday. And today's Viewer Question Friday was sent in to us from Chris. And Chris has a question. He asks, why do you call winter storms clipper systems? And are there clipper systems for other seasons? Great question. And to be honest with you, clipper systems actually are named based off where they develop and drop into the United States. So if Alberta clipper is a low pressure system that forms and drops into the United States from Alberta, there has to be other names, right? Well, I did a video on this a few months back. Check it out. Today I want to talk to you about low pressure systems, in particular ones that develop in Canada, ones that you may know as clipper systems. But did you know that depending on where it forms in Canada, it has a different name? Some may know, some may not. So if a low pressure system develops in Alberta, drops into the United States, it's an Alberta clipper. If a low pressure system develops in Saskatchewan and drops into the United States, it's called a Saskatchewan screamer. Sasky screamer. Because it's screaming, it's fast. If it develops in Manitoba and drops into the United States, it's called a Manitoba mauler. I don't know where the mauler comes from for fast, but those are the names and the terms for where a low pressure system develops in Canada and drops in the United States. Now, the most common term you hear, regardless of where it develops in Canada, is called a clipper system. Because the term comes from a sailboat. Clipper, moves quickly. And that is just what is always stuck. But there's three other provinces and, well, three other terms that you can call them. An Alberta clipper, a Sasky screamer, or a Manitoba mauler. Pretty wild. So how these develop is, one, it's a pretty moisture-starved low pressure system. But they develop on the east coast, or east side, I should say, of the Rocky Mountains. A little bit of that Pacific moisture gets into that system and it develops, and then it jumps into the jet stream, which takes it right down towards the Great Lakes or East Coast. Hence why it's moving so quickly, and hence why we don't see a whole lot of moisture with it. But behind these low pressure systems, we tend to get colder air, which will lead to a little bit of lake effect and stints of colder air. So there you go. Clippers, screamers, maulers. I don't know why. This is the third time I've shot this video, and every time I shoot it, it just makes me giggle. So there you go. Clipper systems. Alberta clipper, Sasky screamer, as well as a Manitoba mauler. They have names, and it's where the low pressure system drops into the United States from. It's just clipper has always been the one that's stuck. And that's why you hear us refer to them as clipper. But meteorological term is where the low pressure system crosses a province in the United States borderline. And if, depending on where it drops in, that's the name for it. So there you go, fun fact for you. And it's pretty wild to think that, yeah, you have clipper systems that have those names, but they're mainly winter related. You can still have low pressure systems drop in during the summer from the northwest. It's just winter. We have those names for those low pressure systems. So thank you, Chris, for our very first Viewer Question Friday. Now, photo of the day. This one is awesome. Sent in from Jeff Ham, brought to you by Great Rooms. This made me laugh so hard. This is darling kitty, looking out the window, and it's titled Bird Watching. But there's a deer. And that deer, I can only assume, is looking at me like cat watching. Jeff, thank you so much for sending this picture in, and thank you again to Great Rooms for sponsoring our Viewer of the Day photos. Trivia. Let's get to trivia. I love that picture. Yesterday we asked you, what does NWS stand for? Is it News, Weather, Sports, National Weather Service, Notable Weather System, or New Water Series? Yeah, it's National Weather Service. In fact, I kind of ruined that in the intro of the show yesterday because I said National Weather Service. Not in the trivia question, but because we had an interview with them. Today's trivia question. This one's a little bit trickier, so we'll see if you can get it out there. And again, hit the QR code. It'll take you to the answer, and you can vote on what your answer is. And then we kind of see how everything tallies up. But today's trivia question is, what does a hydrometer do? Does it measure humidity, measure water, forecast snow, or predicts floods? Do you know what a hydrometer does? Weigh in. Use your camera on your phone. Get on that QR code, click the link, and it'll take you where you can answer, and we'll see how all those shake down. Also, don't forget about our newsletter. Absolutely free. Every morning, it will go out to you, gives you a forecast, gives you a 60-second forecast of what you need to know stepping out the door, and then it also gives you segments from previous shows and maybe some things that were only on social media, and then also has the photo of the day and also trivia. So, that does it for the beginning of the show. So let's jump over to meteorologist John Gross, who is going to break down flooding for us and why that is a huge, severe weather concern. We'll have all that right after the break.
Hey there everyone, Meteorologist John Gross, and today we're going to be talking about what exactly constitutes as a flood, flooding safety, and the differences between what a flash flood watch versus a flash flood warning means. Now, flooding here in the United States is one of the most common and one of the most costly natural disasters we have occurred over the decades, or at least observed over the decades. And you probably have heard of the term flood before, but this is exactly what we're talking about. A lot of heavy rainfall that can lead to rapid water rising in low-lying areas, especially if you may have an area near your home that's prone to flooding, or you might see water collecting with a very saturated ground very, very quickly, as well as any local rivers potentially near your home that have the potential to overflow their banks. So here's a look at some stats when you're talking about not only a lot of water, but especially if it has a current with it. Now, you never should be walking or you never should be driving through any flooded roadways. Again, here's a look at some of those stats. 6 inches of water can sweep you right off your feet. So that can be very, very dangerous if you're trying to walk through any flooded areas. When you're talking about the water getting up towards a foot, 12 inches of water, especially with a stronger current, that has the potential to sweep a small car or even an SUV downstream. And even still, while it's not as common, 18 inches of water, that also has the potential to carry a large truck, an SUV, or potentially even a bus, depending on how much water and how quickly that water is moving. So when you're talking about flash flooding concerns or just flooding concerns in general, one main thing that us meteorologists always try to drive home: turn around and do not drown. So here's a look at the difference between a watch and a warning. And we have talked about this during Severe Weather Awareness Week, and that also applies to flooding concerns. So when you're talking about the flash flood watch, conditions are favorable for flooding. We haven't seen it occur yet, but it's in the forecast that we have that chance to see heavy rainfall occurring in a very, very short period of time. So that's when you need to be prepared. When you're talking about that flash flood warning, you're talking about flash flooding being imminent or it's already occurring. So you're seeing that water collecting in that low-lying area very, very quickly, potentially even with the currents. So that's when you need to take action. That's when you need to get to higher ground. That's when you need to turn around, do not drown, find an alternative route to your destination, and get there safely. So another good way to talk about that watch versus the warning, I think this is a great analogy that sticks with a lot of people. You're talking about tacos. Just another excuse to talk about tacos. So here it is, taco watch. We have the ingredients to make tacos. Flash flood watch. We have the ingredients for a flood to occur. We have the moisture in play. We have the chance for heavy rainfall. We have not made a taco yet, We do not have the flood yet. Taco watch, flash flood watch. When you're talking about the taco warning, flash flood warning, we have tacos, we have flooding occurring right now, so we need to take action right now. I'll go ahead and get right in the middle of it, and we'll explain it one more time. Taco watch, we have the ingredients to make tacos, we have the ingredients for a flood to occur, but we do not have it yet. Taco warning, flash flood warning, we have tacos, we have a flood occurring right this moment, and that's when we need to take action. So preparing for a flood. If you've never occurred or if you've never been through a flooding situation, it's always a good idea to make sure that you have a plan in play. And one of those main things is to know your risk. Do you live in what's called a floodplain, otherwise known an area that's more susceptible for flooding, more so a low-lying area? Water can collect very, very easily. So knowing that, also checking in on the financial side of things. Do you have flood insurance? Are you in that floodplain and you do not have it? Should you have it for your car, your home, anything that you would need to be insured for in case you have water damage due to a flood? Clearing storm drains or any loose debris, especially here in Michigan when we talk about winter time and you have plows that are moving a lot of things, stones, rocks, things of that nature. Those can get caught in storm drains and then block water from properly running off. So making sure that those are clear of any debris, and also, unfortunately, flooding can lead to power outages. So making sure that you have any electronic devices charged up, and also making sure on your devices that you have multiple ways to get alerts for your area in case you are ever issued a flash flood watch or a flash flood warning. I'm Meteorologist John Gross with Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks, John, for that very important information on flooding. Now, coming up next, I take you into a convection experiment to show how convection works. We'll have that right after the break. Welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. And today we're going to be doing a little experiment. Throughout the week, we've been talking to you about severe weather and what fuels severe weather. And you've heard us use the term convection quite a bit, whether it's hail formation, tornado formation, severe thunderstorms forming. And convection is really the main ingredient for that. So we're going to show you an experiment today that you can do with the kiddos or in classrooms or by yourself to check out convection. All you need is a very big container that might be see-through like this that is full of cold water. And it doesn't have to be super cold, but the colder the better for the most part. And then get a smaller see-through glass that you're going to fill with very warm water, not boiling, but just below boiling, and fill that with warm water. And just take a little bit of food coloring and put that in the small glass, not the big glass, the small glass. So we'll put in some water in this, we'll put it in the microwave and heat it up, and then we'll also put a drop of orange or red to signify red, hot, and then we'll drop it into the water and you'll see convection at work. All right, so let's do this and see how it goes. Because to be personally honest with you, I've never tried this, but my science in my head tells me it should math. And that makes sense, right? Right. All right, so we got our warm water, and it's pretty different compared to that. But I think for best results, what you should do is have, some pretty chilly water. For some reason, it's hard for me to find colder water here in the station. But then also the warm water, the hot water out of your tap should be just fine. So let's take our food coloring. We don't want blue. We don't want green. This looks to be like more of an orange and red, so we'll use that. And remember, you want to make sure that you're wearing clothes that you probably don't mind getting stained on, because food coloring can stain even your fingertips. So just be very careful and always have your parents around when dealing with hot water, as well as any experiments. Always best to have adult supervision. So let's go ahead and put the food coloring in the glass, the warm water. There we go. And let's put all the food colorings back. And we'll set those to the side. All right, so you can see now we clearly have a very distinctly orange glass here next to our cold clear glass. So when we put this into the colder water, what you're going to notice is a few different things, and we'll show you that here in full detail. But when you think about the things that will happen when you think about science and what you learn from warm air and cold air, the warm air should rise when it's submerged even in cold air. You should see that fluid mechanic. You should be able to see that warm air circulating up and up and up. And that's convection. And that's essentially what happens with thunderstorms. All that warm air at the surface starts to rise. And once it starts cooling, you start getting the clouds, and those clouds continue to mature, and then you could possibly get thunderstorms or severe thunderstorms or even more severe weather, as dependent on how strong that warm air is rising, but also just if the atmospheric conditions are right to produce what you need for severe weather. So we're going to go ahead, put this into the colder water and show you convection. And put this in. So we're going to take the warm water and put it in the cold water. And you can see there, if you look real closely, you can see that that warm air, that orange, is rising. That is convection. You can see the swirling as it's rising. It's continuing to get to as high as it can possibly get. And that is exactly what you see outside. But the thing is, you don't see it outside. This gives you more representation because you can see that color rising more and more and more, and you can tell even inside the big clear glass where the concentration is. It's much darker at the top where the concentration is, where it's much lighter at the bottom, because that's where you have the cooler air. So you've seen it split, but you also saw those waves of that warm air rising and starting to spread. So that is convection. Very quick here in this little small experiment, but that shows you how thunderstorms are essentially created, or essentially how clouds are created. Convection happens around you on a daily basis. And this shows you exactly how convection works. So there you go. A pretty cool, fun experiment that you can do with your kids. Remember to make sure that you have the right things, because I may have just ruined this towel. So make sure you have a towel and clothes that don't matter, because food coloring does stain. But there you go, the convection properties and what you see with convection. You can't see it out there, so just keep that in mind. Even though we talk about it, there's things in science that you can't necessarily see until you start adding things to make it visible. And when we added the color, that's what allowed us to be able to see the convection happening. So, cool little experiment for you to try. Explain off a little bit of that science and convection and what it does for our weather, because everyday weather really relies a lot on convection, especially when it comes to severe weather, which we've been keeping you aware of throughout the week. So try that out. Show the kids, or kids, show your parents and explain to them. I bet you they'd be pretty impressed. We'll be right back with more Beyond the Forecast. And coming up next here on Beyond the Forecast, me and meteorologist Haley Fischetti had our very first live podcast. And we break down a segment for that for you, talking about, well, this topic we've been talking about all week, severe weather. We'll have that right after the break. And welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. Now, meteorologist Haley Fischetti and I did our very first live streaming podcast, where we ask you, whether it's on Beyond the Forecast Facebook page or the 910 News YouTube channel or mine or Haley Facebook page, we are live there discussing topics. And today's topic, of course, was severe weather. So you joined us, you asked some questions, you discussed with us, and here's how it went. Check it out.
Don asking again, what's new about severe weather that you are excited about?
Technology and forecasting. Oh, that's a really great question. To be honest with you, and we have a planned episode coming up on this here very shortly. I am excited for the new radar upgrades across for the National Weather Service. You might recall in the last few years they upgraded to Doppler radar dual pole, and we have more ways of seeing in the storms. But Doppler radar is sending out
a sound wave.
Yeah, a sound wave that bounces back and relays the information. Now they're looking to upgrade to phased array, which phased array, instead of a sound wave, is a big panel that takes the place of the radar. And you can see more, and it does more. So you can see more of the atmosphere, the building, and then you can also see farther based on what is happening with the radar.
So Manistee County, you're not going to be in the dark anymore.
Lake effect might still be in the dark, but storm-wise, it should be much better.
Yeah.
The upgrades, so to give you an idea, Doppler radar is
Old.
70 plus years old.
Researching on it
Yeah.
the past couple days, World War II.
World War II. Yeah, they put it up in Hawaii, and that was the first
Yep.
use of Doppler
Yeah.
radar. And when they saw Japan coming in, they didn't know if it was working or if it was broken. But that
Right.
was the first time Doppler radar really worked.
They were able
was
to
the
see
planes coming in.
aircrafts
Yeah.
with the radar.
And in fact, Doppler radar, the reason that it was implemented in the way it has been implemented for the National Weather Service. So that's just a little bit of a segment from what was a 35-minute discussion. You can find that podcast in its entirety on YouTube, so you can watch it and listen to it. Or if you just want to listen to it, you can find it wherever you find podcasts. But again, we are working to get all that up and ready for you so you can see Beyond the Forecast and take in Beyond the Forecast, not just on your TV, but also on social media, as well as on any form that you take in information, because weather impacts us every day. Beyond the Forecast is that, and we want you to absorb it the way that you absorb your content. So, thank you for joining us today for Beyond the Forecast and our last episode of the week. 1 week done with Beyond the Forecast. So thank you again. Appreciate you all. Be good, stay safe, take care. For Meteorologist John Gross, Meteorologist Haley Fischetti, I am Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Take care, everybody.